Thanks once again for joining us here at Chopping It Up for another mini episode of Prime Cuts. This week we're taking a brief look at Richard Greenberg's 1989 movie Little Monsters, starring Fred Savage. It follows 11-year-old Brian Stevenson as his family has just moved to a new house in the suburbs. He befriends a monster he finds under his bed, and they form a friendship of sorts as Brian ventures to the monster underworld, and together he and his monster friend Maurice pull pranks on unsuspecting people. If you're interested in watching, this movie is now available for free via the Peacock app. As a reminder, Prime Cuts is designed as a quick-hitting, free-form conversation where we discuss a breadth of horror mediums, including anthologies, theatrical releases, graphic novels, shorts, and other forms of media. There is no set agenda here as we shoot from the hip and provide any gleaned insights from our respective viewings. So, guys, this is usually where I ask if anyone has seen this movie before, but I already know Michael Sled has. This is a longtime favorite movie of yours, and after watching this, I do want to ask you first, Sled, what the hell's wrong with you? All right, lead off, Sled, for real. What do we got?
So, for a little background for our listeners, I have been pressuring Jesse to rewatch this movie for several years at this point, I think. I demanded it for an episode for my birthday. I figured that was the one chance to get it on here. I'm actually, before I go and say what I think, I'd be curious what you think now that you did watch it.
Well, I want to correct you on one thing. It's actually not a rewatch for me. I realized I've never seen it.
Oh, really? Okay.
So this was an absolute new thing for me. I want to, where's the note? One note that I have here. I just have Howie Mandel doing an awful Michael Keaton impersonation from Beetlejuice for an hour and 41 minutes. That's my note that I have. I'll say that I don't know. I think it was categorized as a sci-fi comedy or
it's like a children's. It's supposed to be children's
adventures. Comedy. No, and like none of the things that I looked up on Wikipedia or whatever was it categorized as horror. We're not gonna revisit our standard argument of what constitutes horror or not, because I think it does after watching it. But I guess my take is, man, I was all over the place. I was like, why am I subjecting myself to Howie Mandel for an hour and 41 minutes? One, Savage is actually a much worse actor than I remember because I grew up at the same time that he grew up. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But he was like the it kid for those years. It's 89, right? But then there was some of the stuff about the dysfunctional household and the parents, their marriage falling apart during the movie, and they announced the divorce. And then the loneliness.
A vehicle for them to show that the kids are off fighting monsters? Like,
are you saying as like an allegory? The whole thing is like an allegory?
No, was that just like a vehicle for them to like not be concerned because they were dealing with all that? To notice like what's going, like
I took it as
cutting the legs off of the beds.
I took it as like, I have very mixed feelings about this movie. I liked it a lot when I was a kid. Because I probably watched this at like, I don't know, 12 or something, which is its audience.
Right. The kid's 11, right? He's going on 12.
It's like
it came out in 89, so yeah, y'all would have been 12. I would have been 9.
Yeah. And Howie Mandel, like Jesse's already said, for a 48-year-old man is a lot in this movie, right? Like 48-year-old Joel looks at this and goes, my tastes were special. But there's some interesting stuff in here, right? Like, what's a boy? The main bad character,
or the main bad guy, or he's the big bad. He's like the emperor.
He's the
behind
the other guy. Yeah. Like they're stand-ins for some creepy ass shit. And I don't know. I kind of took it as like it's a exiting boy, like childhood.
Yeah, it's a coming of age story.
A Bildungsroman, as in literary terms. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh wow, la di da.
Mr. Too fun in English class there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, no, like Joel, I found it. I mean, I really, I'm such a spiteful jerk. I was like, I'm gonna bash the fuck out of this. Like, Sled's been asking for it for years, and I was watching it, and then I was like, the first probably third of it, I was like, all right, this takes me back to the '80s. I can watch it. I get what's happening here, and I'm still like, I don't really know that it's a horror. And then it was by turns like upsetting, and then I started really thinking that I thought it was sad and dark at times, that more than I remember. And surely
that was the thing that I guess, because I hadn't watched it for a long time, and then I rewatched it. Must have been probably 10 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
Randomly, it was on, and I remember watching it with my wife, and like not that far into it. Like I remember watching, I'm like, let's watch this. I used to love this movie when I was a kid, and then I remember not being that far into it and being like, man, this movie's really fucking fucked up. Like you start thinking about like if you just watch it on its face, like Howie Mandel's goofy and they're like having a good time and blah, blah, blah. And then you start thinking about what's actually happening in the movie. And it's like super fucking twisted and dark. Like Howie Mandel's supposed to be like, what, 200, 300 years old monster who's like making friends with this little boy kind of, but he's like trying to turn him into, basically trying to lure him to the dark side and turn him to a monster.
Well, he starts to become a monster at some point.
Yeah,
right?
and they're going into kids' rooms in the middle of the night and like not just scaring them, but like doing bad shit to them, like fucking up their house, like getting them in trouble, just like
minor property damage,
dark Peter Pan kind of like thing going on.
Well, it escalates. It escalates. That's how Fred Savage gets sucked into it, because it does start out as, I guess, what by '80s terms were quote unquote harmless pranks, right? So you're coloring marker on stuff, or you're pouring paint stuff, or you're putting peanut butter in someone's, whatever. But then
or kiss.
But that's part of the
monster guy like.
That's part of the escalation, right? Then he pisses in his thing, and then it's like, we're going to terrify a fucking infant in their crib,
Which, like, the thing is, that only goes too far for Fred Savage. All the monsters down, you're like,
they're better.
Actually, it kind of reminded me of some things. If you go back and like, have you ever read like the Screw Tape Diaries?
No.
Where that's by C.S. Lewis. That's the guy who wrote. I mean, and so it's based on like the perspective of like a minor demon like trying to like cause like strife within a family, and it's like this idea of like sin and stuff is a lot like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like big bad devil like what like in apocalyptic. It could just be like all these little things that these monsters are doing that are pretty awful, really. Like if that was like actively going on all the time, like you're just causing misery all the time out of not like. And so and like watching it as a kid, like an adult, I'm like, how much do you pick up? I don't know how much I picked up on it as a kid or not. Like, is there any subconscious like transference of that stuff to where you're thinking about it, like to become accepting of it?
I'm not going to pretend that I came up with this on my own. And for Prime Cuts, we don't generally do research, or do deep dives. This is just supposed to be a first take and freeform conversation. Anyway. You do it anyway. Of course you do, Gene. But I did look up a couple things, and I'm like, one of the theories, the main theory about this movie was that it is supposed to be an allegory or an extended metaphor for child abuse, and that these are kids who are being abused. And you see that when Brian's little brother, he gets kidnapped, right, by the monsters. They have to go to the underworld to rescue him. He's like woozy and like pinned up on this wall, and they're throwing darts at him and stuff, but he looks like drugged. And all of these kids, right, that they're trying
to Savage's brother in real life, I think.
No, it is. Yeah. It's
Dan
his real
Savage or something.
Yeah. So I don't know if anyone else picked up on that. And then
so Jess, real quick, the I must have been reading similar stuff, right? Because one of the ones they were talking, I forget the name of the big, nasty looking monster.
The one smoking the whole time.
Yeah, there was Boy.
He's played by a fairly famous actor. You can recognize his voice.
Frank
like,
say it again, Jeannie.
Frank Whalen.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been
that character. I read is supposed to represent like physical, like violent abuse, like an angry drunk, right? Whereas like the other one, Boy, is the much more sinister, like potential sexual or things like that, right? Like, and it's these like really dark characters that are being used as representation of what happens back in the real world.
Yeah. He takes a fucking kid's the Frank Whaley character, who, by the way, he was Robbie. He was Robbie.
Played Boy.
Oh, Whaley played Boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other one. Well,
the other guy.
Yeah. What's the other guy's name?
Nick is played by. I think he's in The Burbs. What's his fucking name? Rick Ducommun.
Oh, is that the next door neighbor?
That's like the big. He's kind of a big like husky guy.
Yes, that's him. Oh my god, yeah, he's the dude from The Bird. That's right.
He's got
like
that
the
like
heavy guy, Ralph, or whatever.
High pitched like voice, like
the chubby next door neighbor who's like close buddies with Tom Hanks.
Exactly who you're talking about.
And Jeannie, Frank Whaley plays Robbie Krieger in the Oliver Stone The Doors movie.
Is that who it is?
That's where. What's that?
That's amazing.
Pulp Fiction.
Oh yes, and he's in the room when they all get shot up. The famous Sam Jackson line and that.
Yeah.
Well, in any event, yeah, I mean he at some point rips a kid's head off, right, and replaces it with a doll head, and then sends him off. Like, what are we talking about here? This is like this nasty business.
But
again, it's very creepy just in general. Like when they show him when it comes out, and you can tell like he's got like a boy masks kind of sewed on, and then they show to the back of his head, and like his hands are all like,
dude, this is like it's a little bit Hellraiser, it's a little bit of Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a little bit of it's like Beetlejuice, like rated R Beetlejuice. And it's funny because Beetlejuice came out probably a year before this came out. So Mandel really is doing, like, he is stealing a bit from Keaton's Beetlejuice,
at least like a lot of the way he's acting. I think his
shtick really ruined it for me, but the effects that were really awesome, I did like that. I mean, those were legitimate horror effects.
Yeah, like, I think Boy's character with the face,
leather face, he's got the leather face mask, basically.
Like human skin. Really very scary.
And he's in like a schoolboy outfit.
Yeah, dude, so many. Yeah, and that was
imagining the back like at least when I'm watching it, I'm like creating some level of mythology in my head. I'm like, okay, well, I know that like these people become monsters, so it's like, where the fuck did these guys come from? Like they didn't show up there, right? Like
they're Cenobites.
And he wants Fred Savage to be like his friend, basically. Like that's why he's trying to trap him there, because he likes him in particular.
It's
friend.
Very, like,
I'm doing air quotes here.
Vampire, right? Like vibes. Did you did you guys catch that where it's like he's trying to entice him into things? It's very
and when that doesn't work, well, I'm going to blackmail him then and kidnap his little brother and try to force it on him, right?
Yeah. And then when he goes to kill him, like tries to blow them up, like all the weapons are like toys, but the explosions are like very real. Like it's like, oh, it's a toy tank, but it's like fucking blowing stuff up. Like it's I don't know. Yeah. It's like so.
Well, what you know, where it did swerve, with all the tropes that it's playing with from late 80s, cinema fare, is like the divorce, that stuff, which you hear them arguing, well, you're never here, we don't have sex, the only time we're interact is when we fight.
Like a piece of shit, right? I mean,
I think he is a piece of shit. It's Daniel Stern, by the way, of Home Alone fame, but I don't know that he's supposed to be a piece of shit. I think
he like threatens that he's like, you're dead. Like who fucking tells their kid they're dead? Like when they do, I mean, I guess in the 80s.
This is I swear, this is the 80s because he does play with, when Brian, when his son goes to bed and he comes in, oh, it's monsters. He's like, will you let me know, get me an autograph? And he's tickling him and trying to give him a piggyback downstairs. The marriage is falling apart, which I think Stern is acting like he has to act on edge and be harsher than he wants to be because he's not happy,
So what was that house? Did they buy that house? Was that the deal? They were supposed to have bought that house and be fixing it up?
Moved. Yep. They moved to like Chicago, I think is where it ends up being.
No, it had to be East Coast. It had to be like New York, because then they run past Chicago on their way. At the end.
It's got to be East Coast because they end up coming up out of like the wormhole.
That's right. Because you can, I mean, hell, you can hear. I think it's Ben, the little boy. You can hear Ben Savage's accent from, I don't know, half a mile away, where he's like, ooh, and like.
Chicago accent, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Fred Savage is from Chicago, I think. He's a big Cubs fan.
Well,
Go back and watch
that just was the other part of what, like, the serious themes going on here is like the alienation of the children moving to the new neighborhood. He doesn't know anyone. He doesn't have any friends, right?
Yeah, his best friend even later on is now
hold on,
this
Jeannie.
monster, right?
Right, no, exactly. He befriends the only thing that he can. Jeannie, what are you saying? Your mic is kind of low.
I was gonna say, like, maybe in Lost Boys when the brothers moved to the new town.
Yeah, very good.
The new town, like,
yeah,
there's always a town that something's going on in the town.
Yeah, but his world falls apart, right? His circle of childhood friends, wherever they came from, is gone, and now the structure of his immediate family is also crumbling, right? And his dad is going to leave, and like you said, how does he replace that? What does he seek out for companionship and understanding and fun? Howie fucking Mandel. You imagine how desperate you are to want to spend time with Howie Mandel?
I was so mad. I was like, God
damn it.
Led making me watch a movie with Howie Mandel and Fred Savage.
Now, I will say, I won't pretend I think the movie is like super well made or that there aren't like huge like gaps in it. And I'm not even sure a lot of the things that I like about it are intentional. Like, I think some of it maybe is. I just feel like a lot of it is just like stuff that they got in there that they thought would be like a good plot for like a whatever. And it turned out like, if you think about it a little deeper than what's just being shown on the surface.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not, Michael, to that point, I'm not convinced, because I read a little thing that the director was upset with how dark it ended up coming out.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. And so I'm not convinced that they knew what they had until they got through the editing, right? And they're like, "Ooh, this is darker."
Yeah,
than
it's it's got to be Howie Mandel, because I mean, Howie Mandel was like a big star at that point. Like, it was like talk like he did that movie with Bobcat Goldthwait and the fucking where he played a horse or whatever, right?
Was he the horse? Yeah. What is that?
No, it was like Run for. It was like a gambling. Yeah, what was it called?
He had another one where he was a wolf or something that had been found in the wild, and like his rich parents found him or something.
Wasn't he doing Bobby's World back then at this point? Or
Bobby's World was shit though.
Yeah,
I used to love it, though.
I like Bobby's World, but
all I remember from let me say this before I totally bury Mandel, which I will. Toward the end, the last scene, where he's throwing them all up through the wormhole to come out on the beach to escape the underworld. And Brian, Fred Savage, is the last one to go. And they have this little heart to heart, and he gives him his jean jacket or whatever. And like, that's a touching moment. And that is the growing up moment, that he's leaving these things behind and you can't see them again. And also that Maurice, Mandel, is like trapped down there forever, and his lot is what it is. And that was sad. It was really sad. There was also a part of this that really got at me personally, because that's it. I'm the exact same age as Brian, as Fred Savage, while this is happening. And my parents were going through a divorce at the same time. And I remember that as he's like, "Oh, you're just going to go away and do this?" No, I'm just like, not going to be here anymore. Like, your mom and I need some time apart. And I also remember that being a real buzzword in the 80s, where they did that. And I don't know if they do it. They do other fucked up stuff now, but back then it was called trial separation, which just meant we don't want to call it a divorce, because everyone's getting divorced because it's the 80s. And now actually they do really crazy stuff called nesting. Have you ever heard of this? So nesting is when you get divorced, you have kids, but you still live together in the same house so that your kids don't get fucked up.
That just seems like a good way to get killed.
Well, no, you rotate. So like, I live there for a week, and then it's your week, and then it's my week, and then it's your week, and the kids stay there the whole time. So, I think that's.
I say again, that sounds like a good way to get killed.
You don't want to because you know what it is. It's all of the it's none of the good things about marriage, and it's all the bad things. You think when I come back in that my now ex-wife is not going to be like, you know what? Where were the fucking eggs? There's no eggs in here, and you're gonna leave me on my week with no eggs?
You left me with a fucking stink of dirty dishes? Are you kidding?
Yeah, you're kidding. Yeah, it's gonna be worse. But I was gonna say, so that really got at me. But the movie as a whole, disorienting. I feel like we should have gone real dark with it if we were going to do that. You could have really gotten some weird shit out of it, but they tried to everything in the 80s that was deemed a PG movie or like God help you a PG-13 movie. These were nasty fucking. I keep trying. My younger son wants to watch horror movies, and I was telling Joel this, and I was like, I turned him on to The Burbs. Speaking of The Burbs.
Yep.
And what was the other one we watched?
You wanted to watch Gremlins. I don't know if you did.
Oh, well, we watched Beetlejuice and The Burbs, and I was going to put Gremlins on, and another buddy of mine, I was telling that he was like, "Oh, I just did that with my kids." He was like, "Don't do that." Like at some point, first of all, a lot of people get murdered in it, which I guess I don't remember, and also the woman love interest in it is like at some point she's like, "Yeah, like here's why I fucking hate Christmas." My dad dressed up like Santa and was supposed to do whatever, and then like got caught somewhere and died coming down the chimney, or died in the attic, and they didn't find him for 3 weeks, and they found his rotting body in like a Santa suit. I'm like, holy shit.
I remember that. So full disclosure, I showed it to my kids.
Because you're a terrible human being.
Yeah, that's right. And that scene came up, did not remember it. First time watching it in like 20 years, and was like, holy shit. Right? Like, it was great.
But
this movie could be traumatic, Jess.
Oh, it's yeah. I did feel like that watching it. I like.
Well, you've met our entire generation, right?
The whole generation.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're traumatized. Like, look at all this shit. Jesus.
All these movies are so bad for you.
Like, I could totally see how a kid could love this movie. Like, I could picture something like my brother would love this movie, and I would be like so annoyed because he would want to watch it all the time, and then he'd probably be quoting and imitating Howie Mandel, which would drive me right? Because he would have been like 9 at the time, so like prime like audience for that.
I did.
I'm like, what are the things that the kids are going to be saying? Like, what are they going to be quoting? And there were some things in there that I was like, oh god.
Look, my kids are pretty innocent, and I feel like if they watch this, it would traumatize them worse. But then on the other hand, they came home today from playing football with their buddies, and they came in and they're like, and my wife, Andrea, my wife, is in the kitchen. I'm standing there, and they come in. They go, "Mom, what's a queef?"
Oh my god.
I said, she goes, Jesse. I was like, I'm not gonna. You talk to Mom about that. So they're not as innocent. The point is, Joel, you probably didn't fuck them up too much. They probably already heard a lot, and your older ones are old enough. They definitely.
If it was going to be like my kids were fine, but then they saw Gremlins and then whoops, you broke them, right. They were going to break, right? Like,
trust me.
Yeah, I tried to watch Gremlins with Isabel, and she wouldn't do it.
No?
She got too scared and quit.
She seems crazy enough. I thought she would be like all in.
She's really scared of scary movies. Like anything that's like, doesn't even have to be scary, just any kind of tension in movies. She gets very like.
Well, the Gremlins are kind of gross, too. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of splatter horror in it.
All right, guys, let's not get too far.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm just
still making scary kids movies. Go watch Coraline. You'll see. I mean, that movie's dark as shit, and that's made for like preteen, like young teenagers. I think it's animated. I think it's stop motion.
Well, look, we don't do meat cleavers for the prime cuts. We do machetes, right, Sled? Is that right? I think so. We can't fucking remember. All right, let's do machetes for the prime cuts. 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. How many machetes? Joel, let's go.
I'm gonna go like 2.2. Right, like it's there's parts of it I actually kind of like this, like you said, the special effects. They're pretty good. So,
Jeannie, what do you got?
I'm gonna do 2.7. I definitely think there is there's definitely a generation or a group that this is their movie. This is like their cult classic movie.
Yeah. I'm going to split the difference between you guys. I'm going to go 2.5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Sled.
I was going to go 2.5 also, actually. I think that, the movie's very flawed. And like I've said, I'm not sure any of it's that intentional, but I still appreciate the creepiness of it and like the darkness that's behind it. If you think about the movie for a little bit, like I think
it really, really is.
Because it's unintentional. It's like I watch it and I sit back and kind of like start laughing at certain things that happen in it. Like,
Yeah.
just because I'm like, this is so fucked up, and they're like trying to like do it as comedy.
I'll say in football parlance, it outkicked the coverage. I did not realize it was going to. I was, like I said, I came into it ready to bash, and I'm like, this is just. It is what you said it was. It is a twist. It is dark. It is sad. It is different from what we remembered or thought it was. So yeah, I was fine with it. It entertained me. We're gonna keep it short and sweet, like we always do on Prime Cuts. Join us next time, and we'll see you next week.